I'm very happy to interact publicly over the subject of this extraordinary book that you've written. And I think it was a year or so ago, you asked me to meet you via Zoom. You had been here as a visiting teacher, but it was after that because you wanted to discuss shamanism with me. And I was kind of surprised, but that conversation you and I had really, it struck me deeply. And one of the reasons is that I felt that what you were beginning to unwrap in the course of our interaction was something that is so important for us to understand about Buddhism. And that often is ignored because of the refined way that Asian cultures often convey Buddhism, and that something has been lost in this process, and you are retrieving it for us. So I wanted to begin by asking you why this book now?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the invitation. And thank you for talking with me. I'm sure it was like, oh, it's such a different topic to come and talk to a Zen teacher about. So I, in my, I guess, experience of Zen practice and of Buddhism in general, because I felt this with Nichiren Buddhism. And I think at the heart of my innate DNA makeup is a tendency toward ritual and ceremony. And one of the reasons I think when I looked back, I didn't know in the moment, but when I reflect on my entering the gateway of Zen, in Zen and Nichiren, both were the rituals and ceremonies that were happening is what called me more than the dogma per se or the teachings, but the rituals and the ceremonies. And when I went to other places, if I didn't hear chanting or some kind of way of using one's whole body, one's whole life, then I wasn't interested, but I couldn't articulate it that way. Even in some Zen places, I felt that my whole body wasn't being engaged. I felt my mind was, definitely my mind was being engaged. So writing this book was an exploration of this feeling or sometimes tension between the body and the mind and engaging Buddhism. The more I walked the path, and I've had walked it for decades, as many have, I am so clear and so in touch with the original shamanic element of Buddhism, and really before Buddhism and what was brought into Buddhism. So by some indigenous cultures of Asia, different places in Asia, South, Central, and East Asia. I think some of those indigenous cultures from those places brought with them their sweet rituals and ceremonies into Buddhism. And I could feel that. I could feel that even that Buddhism itself was just almost a blanket, even though it came from Buddha, but how it got transmitted, it was a blanket with a lot of things underneath it. And I could feel the things all underneath it because that's who I am. I like to dig below. So the book is an exploration of this idea that, or I would even say my experience, how I experienced the Dharma, and how I experience Nichiren and Zen in particular, and what actually resulted in my life.
Mm,
Yeah, so just for one thing, the first thing that happened after 7 years of chanting intensely in Nichiren tradition, and when I say Nichiren, some people call it Nichiren Daishonin, or I was in the lay organization of Soka Gakkai, which many people know, and just the chanting, and after 7 years, boom, I had this dream, and I know it came from the Dharma. I know it came from, I was dreaming as Buddha did. He dreamed too. He was a lucid dreamer, and that's where a lot of his teachings came from. And so the dream just came through, and there was an oracle, and I'm going, wow, what is this? And to come from the chanting, I didn't even know what it was. I said, someone had to tell me. So I think from that point on, I knew that to really walk and look at this path as an earth-based practice, totally
yeah.
earth-based, even though we do it inside some gorgeous places, but it's totally earth-based. And I immediately started walking in that way, and realize that even too, that maybe some of what we're doing is only like a tip. I think it's a fingernail tip of the practice, that it's so large and so expansive and so
Yeah.
beyond our culture. Like, even, can we even take that in? Can we pretend we got it all? We got Buddhism, we're going, but what are we doing? And that was my question. And I asked myself, what am I doing?
Mm. In the latter part of the book, you speak of zazen in ritual terms.
Mhm.
And I just want to say parenthetically, because I'd like you to go into that geography, because it's so liberating. I want to say parenthetically that I feel many people experience some kind of fear or aversion toward the experience of ritual.
Mhm.
And so one of the questions that came up for me, even, like in the Zendo, we walk in, we bow to our cushion, which is the earth. I
Mhm.
actually look at my zafu as a mountain, a holy mountain that I'm sitting on.
Mhm.
And then we turn and we bow to the whole community. And then we place ourselves upon the earth. We find our seat on the earth. And then throughout the experience, in the temenos of the Zendo, the sacred space of the Zendo, there are so many ways that we embody in a formal manner the deeper truths that the Buddha taught, but also that are intrinsic to the world of indigenous peoples. And I'd love for you to just first take a little bit of time to address the experience of Zen practice, of meditation practice
Mhm.
as a ritual.
Okay. So there is a large section, very large section in the book, Zazen as Ritual. And let me just make a point about the aversion, to ritual, even the word. To some people, they get nervous, like, uh-oh. And, that's probably from watching a bit too much TV, too many movies, and not actually having any experience in ritual and ceremony. And a lot of people think they've had it, but a lot of people don't. So, yeah, so it's coming from some kind of projection, mind projection about ritual, but it's also coming from, I speak about it in the book, this and there is an anti-ritual voice in Zen, and
Yeah.
I speak about that being in probing, in my exploration, it being connected to some kind of colonialism, could be European, could be American, that we marginalize if not erase, shamanic elements of practices we take on, in our culture because it doesn't fit, it doesn't make sense, or, we don't want to do it. We're going to do this instead of doing that. And sometimes you do have to change things to fit the culture. But I do feel that in Zen, the ritual was so simple, so quiet, so still that you could miss it altogether.
Mm.
You could miss the entire, um, I guess, effect of the ceremony. And so I do go into the into zazen and the movement and using the body to, as you said, to like you said, looking at your seat as the mountain, which is the mountain and nature is very much a part of the practice of Zen practice. And um, so when we hear or, listen to or read poetry, Zen poetry or the Zen masters, the haikus and the renges and all the things they wrote were from that place of shamanism, from that place of sitting. So when we're in Zazen, we're not, necessarily calming the mind, trying to be still, trying to whatever change something about ourselves. We're not even having contemplation, or having a reflection. We're not even having that. And so sometimes, and we don't have visualization. So sometimes the people, it's like, oh my God, their minds are running wild in there. And maybe so, maybe, maybe some people's minds are running wild, but the process, hopefully over time, that one develops a zazen mind
Mhm.
and rises and it becomes part of their body and their life. So I was just explaining to some students about zazen being an elixir. So it's like you take the elixir and you wait to feel how it's going to impact you and how you feel about it. But you move with that elixir in your body, and that's the beauty. That's how I experience zazen.
Mm.
It's sort of like I feel like I am like, lifting up off the floor sometimes, or in my chair. I sit in a chair, but just kind of lifting and I'm going like, oh, where am I? Sometimes I try to find myself, but there is this place in which, and I think many people experience it, but we don't talk about it because again, uh, the shamanic experience is marginalized because it's too close to some of the things they weeded out in making Buddhism something more sane and I guess doable. I don't know, but I did. Zazen is that elixir that you take to walk with. Even if you've been to any kind of other ceremonies where there's other things done, drumming and singing, or maybe there actually is an elixir, a plant medicine, you're in that um, with that particular plant, that drum, that song, that dance. You're with that to help you um, enter into a place that's not cluttered with the
Yeah.
world. So it's not to lead the world, because when you come out of that and you engage the world from that place that you find and discover, for me that has been just phenomenal, and all just phenomenal, in everything that I do, including writing books. It's phenomenal, what comes through things that I never thought or imagined. I never imagined that oracle
Mhm.
ever. I didn't even know what it was. And every time I write a book, I go, oh my God, what have I written? Because it's coming from someplace. So then I have to study what I've written myself, every single book. And I'm very nervous because it's all in a book, it's kind of concrete. So, but then I let go because I know where it came from. It came from chanting and sitting and bowing and Sundance and all these places I've been where the world is opened up and where I have wept in every place, in every single place.
Mm.
And if there's no weeping, then you haven't engaged the ceremony.
Oh, thank you so much. I think this is beautiful timing actually to look at this right now. We're having a zazen kai on Saturday, and many people will be sitting on online, and our residents in the Zendo. And it's a you write about it in this way. You say, in fact, the forms reveal that there is nothing to practice. We are being in the form. One cannot think of one's to-do list while bowing. In the bowing, using one's body, there is a chance to experience wellness and transformation, even though the goal is to achieve nothing. Like others pray, and the results of those prayers are unknown. I love how you characterize this experience of entering into a practice where there is nothing to practice. But I want to bring up some other aspect here, Zenju, and that is that in the world of shamanism, the entry into the profession of the shaman is through the gateway of what Mircea Eliade has called a psychomental crisis, where one is dismembered, where one's life comes apart. And I'm wondering how that is reflected within the context of Buddhism.
Yeah. I think we're taught in some ways to hold it together, that some people come to Buddhism to hold it together. The intention is not to lose the mind, even though they say lose the mind. The intention, we're trying very hard to hold our lives together, to compose ourselves. Um, what can happen in that is when there's real disruption in your life, you avoid it, or you try to hold up in it. Um, uh, when George Floyd was killed, they asked me to write about it. And I said, fall off your cushions, get off of those cushions and fall down on the ground and come down and weep and not be composed and not be on some kind of, let me do a practice, but to be in ceremony with the death of not only one person but many, and different kinds of deaths all over the world happening. And so I think that this way of going around disruption rather than embracing it in some way, so that in the best way you can, so that the disruption itself, and often called by many people initiation, disruption itself can be a gateway. That's why they call it initiation. So something's always going to happen to us, always, as a collective, as individuals. As long as there's life, when we're here, something's going to be happening, and when we're gone, something's going to be happening, and a lot of it's going to be horrendous, as unbearable. And that's when a practice like zazen comes through for me.
Yeah.
That's when the ritual itself. I mean, I talk to people sometimes about, there's so many times when I shed tears about all the wounds I have suffered, as a person, as this person, and to be able to bow and offer incense in the midst of one's pain and wounded and suffering is profound to me. It's just a profound moment. It says something, but you have to trust in that. And that doesn't mean giving meaning to the incense, necessarily, or flowers, whatever you offer. And, I think it's just a way of using one's body, one's spirit, to bring up the divinity. There is divinity in Zen. Um, doesn't have to have a god or goddesses, but there is divinity. There are some deities in Buddhism, so we're not going in
There
there,
are.
in that door, but I mean, that door is important too at the same time. I believe that there's so much of the rituals and ceremonies and indigenous medicine that was brought into Buddhism by some of those whose practices were dominated by Buddhism because of colonialism, or the emperor deciding Buddhism is it, governed, a governed practice. Buddhism was a governed practice in many places, but luckily, unfortunately, some of this medicine is left, and I can feel that in Zen, that some of that is very little, like I said, a little fingertip is left in Zen, and I drink it up, like maybe that's all I need, but I drink it in, and this is what allows me to be in the disruption as initiation
Mhm.
rather than as suffering. So I'm not suffering the suffering. I understand the initiation. I understand the walk. And the initiation can be everything. I think a lot of people are looking at the initiation of oppression within spiritual communities.
Mhm.
That to feel that at its height in intensity is a transformation. It's an initiation. Yes, it's political, yes, but it is in this world, in the spirit world, in the divine world, it's the initiation we're going through. And if we can understand that and continue to do the rituals and ceremonies that we do and trust them, it's hard to do when you're an activist, as I am an activist, and sometimes it's hard to trust that anything's going to happen, but that's not our job, is to make it happen, but to be in it. So when it happens, we're there, to be there, to be there. And zazen helps you be there. Now, that's the only meditation I know about is zazen. Okay, so I'm not trying to sell it. I'm just trying to talk from my experience of it. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I think is very true about the structure, about the forms, is that they provide a context in which to lose your mind.
That's right.
And it's been, my experience, particularly in the Rohatsu Sesshin, which I've done for many decades, and it's a time where the sort of pressure of the community. All of us are together in this, and all of us are very interconnected in the body of silence. But what's going on in our own experience, internally, is a kind of dismemberment of the ego, the taking apart of the sense of a small I. And it's very, for me, an extremely intense experience, more intense than, the mountains I've climbed or the drugs I've consumed, to sit still in the midst of this experience of having the ego, the small self, deconstructed, and to stay the course, which I think is one of the really powerful things about the actual context of experience. That, and I often say this at the beginning of Rohatsu, at a certain point, the ego is just going to say, get me out of here. What am I doing? And it's exactly at that point where awakening happens, as you sit through that resistance and you meet who you really are.
Mhm.
You wrote, and by the way, I really look at zazen as a shamanic experience. And you wrote, does not a shaman deal with birth, illness, old age, and death? I mean, these powerful existential questions. is not a shaman, a bodhisattva, a spiritual warrior, you write, who offers their life to help the sufferer. And the sufferer commits to walking alongside the shaman for well-being. And these are such powerful words that you've offered here. I want to ask you, what would happen if we were to treat Buddhism as the shamanic practice that it is?
I think there would be a greater understanding,
Yeah.
of what is being done. It's being sold and packaged in so many ways, Buddhism and meditation these days, that when you get there, you're looking for, you want a result from what what was packaged, for you. And I think that we would let go of result and achievement and accomplishment, and we would let go of seeing ourselves being improved as well, in some way. Um, I always guard against with students, especially when I'm teaching maybe in a monastery, are sharing as to what are you think you're doing when you're trying to behave as a Buddhist. So having these behavioral things we take on that don't make any sense to something we created, and so letting go of a Buddhist behavior and really cracking open, just cracking open humanity through our own body and self, literally cracking it open. And I think people will, if they understand the shamanism and within the Buddha, where it came from, and all the indigenous cultures that helped what we're I won't say help, contributed, if not created, some of what we're practicing, would be an honoring of those indigenous people, but at the same time, it will be it will bring it into the context of the earth and in the base of the earth, and like all other practices we like to do, in the earth, and then trusting that what being on the earth is exactly that way of understanding life, like and seeing ourselves as earth, as nature, and understanding life. So shamanism, they know that. Shamans know that. That's why they go away and they live in the earth, and that's why we go away and live in the monastery. We're not going away to socialize, to find our next partner, to eat good food. That's great. All of that is to support the zazen. And then people sometimes have it the opposite way. We sit zazen so we can eat and sleep, but it's the opposite way. We eat and sleep so we can sit long enough to be cracked open, to shake, to tremble, to get deep down in the center of that earth. And I'm naturally a deep diver, so maybe it's kind of easy and joyful for me in some way, but it's very scary too at the same time. It's a very scary thing to go into a practice or a ritual or a ceremony that you don't know what is happening or what is going to, how it's going to affect you. And I have been really clear of all the various ways that the rituals of Zen have changed me. And, a lot of people say, well, what's with all the robes and all, moving on? All of that is part of it in that way. And I said, basically, we're naked. But since we can't really be naked in front of you, we have these robes that are not of the world. It's a way of taking off all of that and putting it in a closet or wherever. Some people never give them away, we don't walk around in our robes as Zen priests, so we have to keep some of our clothes in the closet, our worldly clothes. But I've taken off my worldly clothes, and I love taking it off and feeling like I'm in my bathrobe or something, and I want my robes to feel like that, like I'm not carrying, all that I'm carrying in the way that I might dress. I'm naked, I'm literally naked, but you can't tell maybe, but even so, then we come and do a talk like you and I, or sit and have a conversation without our worldly clothes. So then people see, oh, those are Zen clothes. And then, so what does Zen clothes? Why would you have Zen clothes? Because you have ceremonial clothes. That's what they are. They're for the ceremony, and they're designed for the ceremony. When I go to Sundance, though, they're clothes. I have ceremony clothes for Sundance that I don't wear nowhere else, only in ceremony. Nowhere else will I wear those clothes. And people say, why don't you dress like that all the time? So these are my ceremony. These are for the ancestors. This is so I present myself to the ancestors. And we are presenting ourselves to the ancestors. And I talk about ancestors and what that is, making offerings and what that is, having gratitude in the end. I think we would have more gratitude for the practice if it were talked about and walked in this way that it was. And that's how I've done it for 30 years, Otherwise, I think I would have done something else, which I did a few other things, but Zen was every day. Sundance is not every day. And my African traditions were not every day. This was the only everyday community, a whole community doing ritual and ceremony every day. I don't know where else to get that.
One of the things that you mention in the book that I think is really important has to do with patience. Patience, as you say, with the slow and invisible effects of these activities on one's life. I think that often we want something that's quick, a kind of easy fix.
Yeah.
But there's something that is so inexorable, so powerful under the kind of skin of the practice that really arises only through the experience of time. And I'd love for you to reflect on this kind of longer path, not the sort of the drop 600 mics of acid or, eat your mushrooms, have your big blowout. Yeah. But that this is, a different kind of experience, a different kind of structure. I'd love for you to reflect on that. The value of patience, of staying with the practice.
Yeah, and it's taking it on as a way of life. Like there's nothing else. That doesn't mean you have to become an ordained priest and live in a monastery, but taking the practice on as your life, like a way of life. I just taught a class about forgiveness being a way of life, like a way of being, rather than having forgiveness be that thing you do after the harm has happened. Because if you live forgiveness as a way of life, then you don't have to do that thing after you've harmed someone, or they don't have to do it after they've harmed you. But it's taking it on as a way as you walk in life, having something to support you in your life as well. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people, when several times I've done Zoom with different people, and a question always comes up, and I don't want to stop anybody from asking the question, but I'm going to say it. People always say, how can I be calm? How can I be calm? And I always say, and I'm really not joking, but it's funny, that if you just want to be calm, there are a lot of teas available. But if you want to walk a path and come down here and really see what life is, and what you've been given and how you can use it, even the muck, how you can use the muck, all that stuff that's happening, that is what I can join you in. But I will offer you tea first, chamomile. If you need your body to, because we do need your body to settle instantly. Some of us, our nerves are raw, especially now, stress. I understand the question, But this is what we're talking about in Buddhism. It's not let me go do some meditation. It's not like yoga. Let me get the position. Even yoga, I think, though, it's a deeper practice. And I think a lot of teachers teach it that way. But it's important, I think, to, if you're going to consider this elixir, consider it as something that you want to grow in you and you know, in from your gut and out, from your hara and out, into your whole body, into your whole life. It'll grow and flow into other people. You don't have to make up what compassion is. It'll happen. You don't have to make up of loving kindness. Hopefully those things will come. Peace, harmony, all those things you can achieve, all those things we try to define and manufacture, that's just in our minds. But you don't really, I always ask people, what is your experience of compassion? What is it? And the things they say is something they decided this is compassion. It has a standard. It has something, a feel, a look, a texture.
Well, I was very struck by you comparing the shaman, the role of the shaman, to the role of the bodhisattva.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you know, the shaman's work is that of a healer. And what is he or she healing? Sometimes it's physical illness, sometimes it's mental or spiritual illness, but inevitably it has to do with coming alongside and then and not separating from the truth of suffering. And boy, Buddhism lays that out. But this is the work of the shaman, to really hold up the mirror so that one can see one's suffering, and then to begin to unify, to create what Bernie Roshi emphasized again and again in the practice that we explored together, this experience of one body. That is, our physical body is not separate from the very earth or the atmosphere that we're breathing, not separate from each other, not separate from our ancestors, and so forth.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you about altered states, because, you know, this is something that is pretty consistent across many cultures, that where the initiatic process through which the shaman passes involves moving into, you know, a deeply transformed state of consciousness. And then those states are evoked in, you know, say the village through the medium of ceremony. I'm just curious about what your perspective is in relation to the experience of altered states of consciousness in terms of Zen.
Yes. Yes, I've had them, and I think many people have experienced some kind of altered consciousness. I remember when I did have one, it was pretty big, and they said don't. I was trying to describe it, and they said don't be fascinated with it, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. You know, and I think quite often in many places people get fascinated. They talk about their altered state, and you know, I don't know what's the motivation. So you know, I was trying to find out what happened. You know, what happened to me in there, and in the Zendo, and there's no real answer to that, because that's a personal experience with the spirit and with the divine. It's a personal experience. So like you said, the shaman, you come to the shaman, I'm having, you know, headaches all the time, and my body trembles, and the shaman doesn't deal with your headache and the trembles, you know, like just like, oh, let me deal with your head and now you're trembling. You know, they don't, it's not symptomatic like our doctors might do. And like you said, it's whole body. So I think that, and I feel, you know, too, that, you know, I know I'm going a long way around all the time when I'm responding, but, you know, so many things come up for me, you know, around these questions and altered states. Some people try to reach altered states and they'll come to the practice and they'll fast and they'll do all kinds of things because they're pushing for it to happen. And I think it comes quite naturally, and maybe not at all for some people. To not have one doesn't mean, oh my God, I'm not practicing correctly. You know, it's if you finally get out into the middle of the ocean, you finally, you know, get out there, you were like kind of walking through this gate, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh no, I'm in the middle of the ocean. And and then suddenly, you know, all your fear arises, and you're going to drown and you're going to die, and which is, you know, all the things we already feel before we got in the ocean. And so I think that that's when the zazen, the elixir, kicks in to help you just be in the middle of the ocean. And even if you're afraid, you'll stay in that ocean. Like, that's how I experienced. I stayed in the middle of the ocean, even though I was frightened that, you know, I was going to drown. And I'm a person who can't swim very well, hardly at all. So to be in the middle of the ocean like that every time I went in to do this practice with others, you know, it's a community action, and it is taking action. Taking action in the midst of our human condition. So it is a social action, a different kind of social action. But I think altered states, I think I don't get fascinated with it as much. I already had the oracle, you know, Big Bang, you know, before I came to Zen. And so it was clear that if you're open enough and still enough, sometimes the Africans talk about, in some traditions, you know, putting the medicine in your head, putting the teachings in your head, because they, you know, finally are open enough to put it in there, you know, so that's what the altered state is. You're finally receiving, you know, what sages and prophets have taught for centuries and centuries. Everything we're learning and being told and being taught is as old as humanity. So it's you know, the altered state, I had it in the middle of Dharma transmission, and it was like I was by myself in the middle in my living room, and it was a little bit frightening for a moment. I had, you know, you have to bow like 100,000 times, and I have been doing that bowing, and I did mine a little bit different. I invited my students into the bowing in the first 2 weeks, and the next weeks I did it at the center at the temple. But I remember bowing and then getting up, and I looked out at the tree, this big, huge oak tree that was at my house. I had these big windows where all the sun came in. And I realized that the earth only existed because my eyes were open.
Mm. Well, Zenju, you know, our time is up for this portion.
Yes.
I have so many more questions, you know, I wanted to ask you this evening, but I just want to say to all of us who are gathered here, this book that Zenju has written is really fascinating. As familiar as I am with the world of shamanism, and I've been in the Buddhist world since 1965, practicing with the Four Noble Truths, if you will, sitting on the holy mountain of my Zafu and failing continuously. I learned more from your book about the value of ceremony, which, by the way, shares the same root as the word cure. That the ceremony that we engage in as we step into the temple, step over the threshold, allows us to actually meet life in a sacred way, our ordinary, our everyday life, without pretension. So I thank you for writing this book, and we will chant the 4 vows. And then our dear friends on YouTube, thank you so much. And we will then spend a little bit of time with our socially engaged Buddhist training community.
So there'll be the Q&A after this.
Yeah.
Yes, Q&A. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Goes on.
I'm gonna hand it right over to the Zendo because I think we'll chant the 4 vows now.
Okay.
Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to transform them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The awakened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to transform them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The awakened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to transform them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The awakened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it.
So thank you everyone who's joined us on YouTube for our Wednesday night Dharma talk. And we will see you next Wednesday. And if you are local, hopefully on Friday evening for our open sit in the afternoon at 5:30. Thank you for being with us.
And also join the Zazen Kai on Saturday and then haiku on Sunday. Bye, YouTube people.
So if you're
Okay.
on Zoom, you stay, right? For the
Yeah.
So our Zoom community will stay. And we all kind of know the structure by now, which is if you have a question to raise your digital hand. And while people are Zenju, I just want to thank you for calling in the kind of depth of ceremony in our tradition that's always there, that's in every sit, that I think we can really, you implied this, you and Roshi both implied this, but because it's every day, we can forget the kind of depth and radicalness of zazen. And I wonder if there's a way you approach it that reminds you in your practice of kind of our whole life is right in this.
Yes, great question. I approach it just as Suzuki Roshi told us, beginner's mind. I have never done this before. I have never entered in this moment. I have never sat here. I have never had what's going to come through me, come through me. This moment is another moment. That is how I come to it daily, especially when I experienced my first like sesshin, an intensive, I did. But I think that that's how you approach it, and just, that continuous way of discovery and not, I know this, I know to bow, I know to bow, I know we're going to chant, I know what's going to happen next, and I know what's going to happen next. And I love it when what happens next doesn't happen. That's very rare, but I love when that happens in the Zendo. I just like, yes, yes, here's a moment, you know, and someone loses the chant, they forget the echo or whatever. I love that. You know, I think that's when I always feel like that's when spirit comes in and kind of like pushes us over, you know, like, excuse me, you know, you think you know so much. And so it's not knowing, you know, because we don't know. We don't know what is going to come of our lives, even in that moment, even in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I so appreciate Orioki for that reason. Something always
Yes, Orioki's a good one.
inevitably during a week, the spirit comes in.
Oh yeah. Snatches our utensils, throw them
Or
on the floor.
chopsticks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
So I'd love
So,
to open
well,
it up.
can I
Yeah,
ask a
Roshi.
question? You know, in the first part of the book, you talk about internalized depression.
Mhm.
And this is, I think, really important, particularly for our community and our socially engaged community. I'd love for you to reflect on how you approach that.
I don't approach it. Yeah, I don't approach it. It's as much a part of my life as zazen is.
Yeah.
I've given my internalized oppression company. It's there. I was born with it, inside of it, and then there was some other place inside of me too that was untouched by it, and I found that in zazen. I discovered that and welcomed it to sit alongside the internalized suppression, and that has impacted me from the day I was born, even before I could talk, before I could speak. You know, there were diagnoses made based on my skin color and are missed because of my skin color, you know, and turns out, ooh, yeah, oh, you know, so all kinds of things happen in our lives. And in my life, especially, I used to wonder why. It's like, why am I suffering extra? You know, a lot. I used to like wonder that. I feel like I'm suffering extra and extra. And I could have been, you know, in my mind, you can measure it. You know, can you measure it? But I believe that we often in many practices, when we hop off into dealing with oppression, we hop off. Actually, we just leave the ceremony and we don't bring
Yeah.
the elixir with us. We don't bring what's inside, or we ignore it. Like, whoo, I feel kind of different. I don't really know if I feel like marching, but I'm going to march anyway because that's what people do, you know. Or we just don't. We don't sit and realize maybe there's something else to do for us to do. And I always tell people, you know, to really or suggest and guide to really notice what is your movement and how should you move. What is your movement and how should you move? You can't move, you know, I've seen people trying to do everything. I see it, you know, they just like, they post up every movement. And so they're not focused on any kind of a path, you know, with those movements. And if they focused on the path in conjunction with those movements, then there would be more of a direction for them than going from one thing to the other thing to the other thing and just being pulled by this thing and that thing in the world. In Nichiren, we called it being unrooted, you know, rooted. But then again, some people say unrootedness is the place of transformation. So, you know, the tree comes up and something else happens.
Yeah.
Something's revealed. Yeah.
I like the expression jumping from wave to wave in search of wetness.
Yeah.
And, you know, I feel like my practice, I drown in it.
Yeah.
I simply drown in it.
Yeah.
I have to let go. It reminds me of that story of Suzuki Roshi in the Narrows, where he began to drown.
Yeah.
And you know the story. It's such a great story. You know, he's there and all the nice ladies and the guys are all in there swimming, and he just sinks to the bottom of the Narrows like a stone. And he had this real insight. And I think that it was a shamanic moment for him, that the only way he could practice was to let go completely, as if he were dying,
Yes.
as
That's
if he were dying. And that's what I feel is so important about practice, that you're in it completely as if you're dying.
Yes. Yeah, I even had the experience similar in Tasahara. We were on the cliffs and we were looking for the narrows and we went too far and we ended up on these cliffs and I can't do heights. And so there was the road was only enough for your toes. Like the path was only enough. And they wanted me to jump over or something. And, down was death. Down was death. And the only way I could finally do that was say, yes, I'm going to die right now. Here I go. And I just prayed that I would die before I hit the bottom. That was my only prayer. Please die before you hit the bottom. And die. Don't stay alive. Please let go of your body, And I did it. And then when we went back, I really couldn't find that spot. Like it disappeared.
Hmm.
We went back the same way. And still today I go, where was that spot? Well, maybe I died. Because it wasn't there anymore. So something died. I don't know.
Beautiful. So I would like to invite our community, a couple of you all, please ask a question. I have tons of things I want to burrow into with Zenju, but let's hear from you. Don't be shy. It's a chance for us to okay, great. Kosan?
Yeah. Is it Azel or Ezel?
I mean,
Yes, Azel.
hi, Isaac.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Early on in my practice of Buddhism, I was also practicing a Cherokee practice along with that. But prior to that, I had been studying with Starhawk in the Celtic tradition, and so in this particular Cherokee practice, which could go shamanic, was a priest craft. But I was mixing them, and there were, at one point I was in my meditation and I was all of a sudden outside of the practice space. I was in Vancouver and I was over the center and in the sky or something. And it was so sudden, I didn't know what had happened. And I spoke to one of the teachers that worked with us, and she said to me, and I'd love your feedback on this, having to do with the shamanic way and what you said about Zen, is she said, with the Celtic practice, it was broken. It was broken, and it was so much violence over time. With the Cherokee tradition, it has roots that have continued on, that haven't been broken in the same way that the violence broke the Wiccan and the witchcraft of visualizations and everything. So I guess that's it. I've always held that and wondered about, welcoming in the various traditions, because that one is that Cherokee tradition is strong in me. And so I really love it, and I can't wait to get your book, but I'd love to hear what you might say about that.
So, all of the traditions that I have practiced, I was invited into. It wasn't my idea. All of them: Sundance, Nichiren Buddhism, Zazen, dancing in circle with the diviners from Dahomey. I was invited into all of those circles. And every time they opened those gateways opened up, I was like, oh no, what is this? So I never was one of those guys, I think I'll try this, or, I don't know what your experience, but I'm just saying that for mine, I never really did, reach out. I didn't reach out for Buddhism. I wasn't interested in Buddhism or Buddha at all. when I, you know, and I always still say that in a way that I was more interested in wellness and transformation. Not that these things would make me well or transform me, you know, as a goal, but a path to walk in the muck of this life. And so the life could happen anywhere and be anywhere. And there are many, you know, traditions that have been broken. I also drum Congolese rhythms from the Congo, and with the war, many of their drums were burned, shredded, you know, tossed out, and so there's been this in shrines burned, and so this is a constant thing. For me, I haven't experienced the brokenness of that practice, because I hear my Congolese self in those drums. And I didn't know I had any Congolese in me until I got a DNA test just last year. And there it was, Congo. I didn't have to really, I just like, yeah, of course. You know, so you have to know your heart. You have to know your soul. You have to know your spirit, you know, and what is calling, and move in that way, you know. And I don't see the division, because I'm meeting all of these places in that same place, which is a very divine place. I'm meeting them. I do think the teachings, when I do feel the teachings are different, so much different that it's pulling me, then I let go of that. You know, so Nisha and it was gradual, but I haven't let go of the people, but I let go of that. You know, the people, they're my first Buddhist tribe for 15 years, you know, so, but I didn't let go of them, but some of the things in the way I practice was counter, you know, so I needed the space, and now I could go back. I still will chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. I will. And I will chant that mantra. It's a powerful mantra. That mantra brought that oracle into my life. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. So I know it's powerful. Any mantra is. Any mantra that includes the teachings of the earth. You know, so your body will know when it's time to move forward into different places, and to move whether you're ready or not, or whether your friends are coming with you or not, or any of that, or your partners, you know, that kind of stuff always stops a lot of people, you know, from doing things. And so, you know, I did hesitate because of some outer external things, but eventually I just, you know, the gate keeps appearing until I find myself sitting there. I couldn't believe I was sitting in a zendo, and I didn't know what a zendo was. I said, what is this? You know, really, what are we doing? Yeah. What am I doing? I don't know if that helps you. Yeah.
No, thank you. It's about that different kinds of medicine, and how do we allow, I think from what you're saying is, how do you allow and allow it to move through you as medicine. And that's what that teacher was
Yes.
saying.
Yeah. In your
There are
body.
different
Yeah.
kinds of medicine.
Right. Right. And I when I'm at Sundance, I'm not chanting and bowing and offering incense.
Mm.
No, I'm right there. I'm right at the altar where those chanupas sit. I'm right there, those pipes where the medicine is. I'm nowhere else. I don't even hear a Buddha prayer. But when I'm in a zendo, although the Lakota songs do come up sometimes while I'm in sashimi, trying to survive, but mostly I don't bring that either. I just bring myself to the gateway. I don't bring, bring my little tools from my other traditions. You know, I don't. They stay where they stay.
Thank you.
You know.
Beautiful.
Allison, go ahead. Gonna unmute you.
Thank you very much, Zenju. I think I have one small question, and primarily just a gratitude, because I feel like very much kind of echoing what you're sharing with us, the transmission of your presence and the embodiment of what you're expressing in no separation. Like a moment ago when you're saying, I'm just right there. I'm just right there. I'm actually feeling that. And which I experience as the most potent teaching and transmission and embodiment. So I want to thank you for that. And I'm also interested in all of this, how you would specifically define the term shamanic, like it's being used, but I'm curious about how you might specifically define that.
Yeah. It's being used and also misused a lot. And also there's definitely, a place where people would like us not to use it outside of their own practice. So I understand all of that pretty completely. In the book, I say my own, how I'm using it there. And I'm not trying to make Zen shamanic. I am not trying to influence people to take on the practice as shamanic. And it's just how I wrote it through my experience only. So in the experience of those around me, I wasn't alone in this. But I would say that to me, it is a shift in consciousness. That shamanism is a shift in consciousness, and it can't be done with our minds. Right? We hear that in Zen, the deluded mind, how's that going to lead you to freedom? Well, the deluded mind can't get cut off, right? Can't go anywhere. Actually, Dogen says, use the deluded mind. You need to think. Don't stop thinking. You need to think that delusion and enlightenment are tango partners. You can't, tango, you do need two people to do it. And so they're tangled, and we don't like that couple. We like one part of that couple, and that's enlightenment. But the deluded part of the couple, we want to could you go somewhere, and do something, but we need them both together. They're both together. We don't need them. They're just there together. That's the nature of life and the nature of human beings. So I just see shamanism as that expansive consciousness, expanding it to places we don't know, like not knowing what loving kindness is, not knowing it, not knowing what peace really is. But then when we experience our life, if you're on a path, or you're bringing in something that helps you to be expansive, drumming did that for me as well, that helps you to be expansive, then that is that is the possibility of this shifted consciousness that I feel shamanism brings, when you're involved in it. And you can't really, there's specific definitions from specific traditions. And in the book, I do talk about it a lot. I talk about the word. And so it's interesting, when you mentioned about being in the body, and being there. My book right before it, the Deepest Peace, I wrote that book. I tried to write it in that place under the influence of the elixir of zazen. I try to write it that way. So I tell people there's no real knowledge to gather in that book, but there is an experience I'm hoping people have, and in reading it, that they experience something. So of that being, and I feel like that book touches a lot of what I'm talking about in the Shamanic Bones of Zen, to actually write from that place of that expansiveness and being out in the middle of the ocean. And just, can you imagine just sitting out there writing a book, while the water's right there. So that kind of way of living, it's a way of living. Yeah.
Thank you, Allison. And thank you, Zenju. We're reaching the hour. I'm wondering, one more question, or we have
3 people's hands, huh? Yeah. I don't know how you handle it. I'm okay.
Well,
I'm okay with the 3 people and no more, maybe. I don't know.
Okay. So Elena, I think you're up next.
Okay.
Mine is fast. I just wanted to say thank you so much for the permission. I feel like a new person in regards to Zen practice now. I feel like all the times I've ever heard Hebrew prayers from synagogue, even Senegalese songs, sometimes I hear when I'm sitting for long periods and I don't know what I'm hearing, and I do know what I'm hearing and I try to put it out. Thank you for the permission to have the experience.
Yeah.
And also thank you for the realistic way that you teach. I don't think I've ever experienced this sort of realism in Zen teaching. I've had it in shades, but nothing like what you bring. And as the previous person said, thank you, Allison. Thank you so much for the transmission.
All right. Thank you for being here. Okay.
Thank you, Elena. Joyce?
Hello. I too just have just a real moment of gratitude here. I was also involved with in the East Asian Buddhist community and was very used to the drumming and the chanting and all the formal things that I just absolutely loved. And when I first came back from that after living in a Buddhist community for a short time, it was like, and I had never really been involved with a Zen community. It was like, where's all the drumming? Where's all the, it was just, it was a very different experience for me. But I've been to Upaya just a couple of times as a guest practitioner, but it's one of the places where I feel the absolute closest, and I appreciate that too. But with your talking about Native American spirituality, and I'm so sorry I forgot your name, who mentioned the Celtic women's spirituality, that both of those things are very important in my life. So this kind of melding and this appreciation and a way to move forward is just very, very enlightening and special to me. And I so appreciate all of your comments. And can we have tea?
Yeah. Every time you drink a cup, imagine me. So, yeah, and I wanted to say that the drum is different, and the rhythm, there's still rhythm, right? It's the rhythm that moves the body, that moves to transformation. There is chanting, that's rhythm. Yeah, that's major rhythm. And you chant it, and it's designed to move something in your body. It's ancient. We didn't make it up in this day and time. It's ancient, old medicine. And so there's rhythm there. There's also rhythm in the makugyo, the fish drum, which I love, and I couldn't wait to play that. And so there's that, there's so much rhythm in Zen. I just want to put that note on there. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Joyce. Valentino, you're our last question.
Thank you, Zenju. This is, my name is Valentino. That was the name that the Spanish gave my ancestors. I'm a Jicarilla indigenous Apache, and I'm here with my counterpart who's Comanche. And so we've been listening very intently. Her name is Del Mar, which means of the sea. And you're talking about something very simple but extremely subtle, and it brings to mind the reference point that Native people have, which is always the mother, the earth, and how the last stage of genocide is actually praise within a culture. So the subtlety of what you're offering can actually be colonized and co-opted and not understood well. And particularly with the shamanistic aspect, is that's a sliver of what it means to be Native. And in my community, we have shamans, and they're the same as what a modern day plumber would be, because they fix things that clogs that other people can't fix. But the responsibility of the community is to sustain the agreements that we all know and understand. That's right. And so if you could speak to that, I could go on and on. I'm a Native person.
Yeah. So yeah, I know you. That is what I love about being here. I live in New Mexico, and I'm on the unceded land of the Tiwa and the
Okawinge.
Yeah, right.
Uh-huh.
The Navajo, Dene, and the different the three different tribes here, Aztec tribes, and not Aztecs, I'm serious, Apache,
Yeah.
uh,
Mhm.
and I have Appaloosa Native American blood.
Mm.
Where Black people in the South mixed in with the natives, and through my father's lineage, he was born 1898, and
Mm.
so there's definitely a connection there in the South with Native medicine, a lot of different tribes. So I don't walk around calling myself, Native American. I just know that's in my blood, and that's just something that I feel. It's not what I am in the way you are. And I feel that when I talk about shamanism and Zen, I'm not talking about it's in the same vein as any other practice outside of Zen or any indigenous practice. But what I'm calling forth in the book is that there is an indigenous, a lot of the indigenous societies in Japan who were practicing Shinto and Shingon, which they're very, mystical practices.
The
But
Ainu. Mhm.
you know about them. So,
Mhm.
so I'm just trying to say that there's some of that in there, and that if we could honor that piece and that part, that Buddhism, in this country could have, a different kind of respect and regard. So I feel I'm not a shaman. I actually do divinations though, with that oracle that came through in my dream. I divine people.
Well, I'm not worried about you. I'm worried about the book and people receiving it, because I hear you and I understand you very
Yeah,
clearly.
I
And so I
understand.
just wanted you to
Well, we
speak to that.
can't be worried about the other people,
Yeah.
And so if I can, it's not out. So I would love for you to read it when it comes out.
Mm.
It comes out in February, but you can, like get it now. But, I didn't really mean to be doing something so early, but it happened. Call me and let's have a talk. Let's talk about what you think I've done, because I'm very protective, extremely
Mm.
protective of practices and traditions. And I'm protective of Zen. I'm
Mm.
protective of all practices,
Mm.
And how they're regarded and respected. If they're coming from the earth, they're coming from that wisdom place.
Yes.
So I worked very hard to respect, to not cross, to disclaim when I should, and within the book, to include voices of people who I do know that practice indigenous practice. A friend of mine wrote a wonderful, beautiful book. Toby Coriel, her writings in there, and Don Ruiz, his son has a book, and I used that too. I brought their voices in as places to say, this is what this is. So I'm not saying that's what we are, but there is a shamanic aspect that has been lost. And so sometimes when we're in the Buddhism, it gets shallow. There's a shallow. Now, where do we go from here? Like, what are we doing? Okay, I'm done with this. It's just empty, And so, but because we're not awake to some of the ceremonies and rituals, we may watch them, may even engage in them, but not long enough, because we're not understanding, because the way meditation in Buddhism is sold into this community, it's not sold as it's not talked about. It's actually
Yeah.
sold. It's not talked about as a path to go deeply, that you have to sit in the dirt.
Mm.
You
Well,
must sit in the dirt.
well, thank you for your humility and willingness to be raw.
Thank you for bringing your voice. I'm glad I waited. And, I'm really looking forward and hearing from both of you. Delmar, you too, to see what you think. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Yes.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Valentino. And thank you, Zenju. This is one of the longest conversations we've had after a Dharma talk with the SEBT community. So you've blown people wide open, and it's a pleasure to kind of just be in this space with you. And I hope we're able to do so again. We're not so far away during these COVID times. It's all mixed up, but Roshi, before we close, is there anything you wanted to say?
Not really. I just feel deeply met. And also, having read the book twice now, once when you first gave it to me in the PDF form, and then again in the past few days, I feel so enriched by it. I actually told Kozan, I really want all my students to read this book, because what it does, it brings people back to the deep roots of this practice. And as you say, in a way, meditation, like yoga, has been so commodified and put on the surface of things. And this brings us back to earth. So I'm so grateful, my dear friend.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
And just FYI, next year, Zenju will be doing a series of 3 teachings in the course of next year, taking a deep dive into various aspects that are covered in the book in the way that only she can.
Okay, all right.
So thank you again, Zenju. And just a reminder to everyone, we'll be meeting again next Wednesday. Bill Du Bois will be giving the Dharma talk, and then again the next day for our Thursday meeting with Rhonda McGee. So we'll see you all there. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, Zenju.
Thank you, whoever said that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zenju.
Thank you. Thank you, Kai.
Thank you, Sensei.